Welcome to the With Winning in Mind podcast. I'm Heather Sumlin along with Troy Basham, and we are discussing how to do an end of the year analysis. And
Yes.
Troy is the expert.
Or end of the year review, as I like to say.
A review.
But
Review.
I know Lanny likes to use analysis.
Well, it fits with performance analysis, event analysis,
Yeah. See,
paralysis by analysis.
I like to look at the review. So we're coming up to the end of the year, and people are starting to think about the next year. Many people are probably like watching this in January, February timeframe, and they're probably thinking about, okay, what kind of goals do I want to set for this year? What do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? And then they're starting to figure out their plan for the year and how they want to do that, and they're proactive in that area.
I have a question before
Yep.
you get into it, which is going to derail you completely. But what are your thoughts on the differences between resolutions and goals?
I don't know. I just kind of think one's more of a wish and one's more of a purpose.
So a goal would be a purpose, but a resolution would be a wish. Is that what you think?
Yes.
Like most New Year's resolutions don't actually get accomplished. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That's just my...
But is it because people aren't doing an end of the year review to know what they need to set their goals or resolutions for?
It could be, but I also think it's because when we think about goals, we talk about our goal setting system.
Right.
And so there's an order of a process to go with that. And if you want to be successful in anything, you have to have a process. And if you follow the process, it should lead to good results. So the result should be a byproduct of how well you executed the process. Where resolution, I think, is a nice way of saying, hey, I want to do this, but you don't go any further. I mean, you might, like people, I want to join a gym membership or something. I'm going to go work out, but it's short-lived.
I did that one time. I signed up for a membership and I thought, yes, I'm going to go to the gym. And I did. I went to the gym to pay for the membership. I went to the gym 2 more times. But the act of getting to the gym, I didn't consider all of the variables that would be in the way. I had small children. It wasn't part of a habit. I didn't write a directive affirmation. And I wound up paying for a year membership for 3 times at the gym.
Yeah. To me, that's a resolution.
Yeah, I think so.
Where a goal would be, okay, what to me, the gym membership would have been a part of the plan to reach a certain goal, which is probably to get healthy, to get to a certain weight that you want to maintain, something like that. Where most people look at it as like, no, I'm going to go there because I want to lose weight or feel better, but it's temporary. To me, a goal is more than that. A goal is something I am moving towards. Most of the people that I work with that are athletes have yearly goals. They have annual goals, and those annual goals are leading towards something that's going to get them closer to where they want to be longer term than a year. So think about Olympic sports. We grew up in a household where our father was training for the Olympics. Well, Olympics is every 4 years. So just like the World Cup that just ended recently, right? You got to wait 4 years before we see another World Cup. Okay. Well, the Olympics, 4 years, that's a long wait. So when you're in a sport, like gymnastics or shooting sports, track and field probably would be that as well. What's bigger than the Olympics? It's hard to find something that's going to be equal to that. And you got to wait 4 years before you get there. So, what are you doing year to year to lead up to that 4 years? Well, you're going to have these annual goals that are basically shorter term goals to where if you accomplish that, you're on your road to getting that longer term goal. So to me, that's how I look at goals versus resolutions. Well, when you look at it, every athlete that I work with that's in an individual sport, this time of year, or let's just use end of the year, starting of the new year, depending on the sport, it might change. Right? Because some sports, their season may end differently. Like thinking about team sports, football's going on right now. The NFL doesn't technically end until the Super Bowl, which is in February. Unless you don't make the playoffs, then you're not playing in February, right? So you're looking at it, you're saying, okay, well, the season hasn't, quote, ended this year. It actually ends a couple months later. But for sake of argument, we'll just say, okay, our season ended this year, and then we're starting next year. So we got 2022 that just ended and 2023 that's beginning. Okay, what do I want to accomplish in 2023? And people will look back at the previous year and they say, okay, what do I need to fix or get better at so then next year will be better? And that's what most people do.
So
And
that's like their first step to their end of the year review.
yeah, because if I'm a shooter and I've got 3 disciplines, let's say prone, standing, kneeling, and kneeling was just horrific last year and it kept me from winning, then it would make sense that I need to fix that. Okay, and then so I do that. If I'm a golfer and my putting stats were not good and that kept me from winning, then what am I going to do? I'm going to fix that and work towards it. So the issue isn't that isn't what we want to do. We definitely want to correct what needs to be fixed, right? We want to fix what needs to be corrected or whatever. We want to make sure that we're better in that area. However, I think that's not the right approach. I think the right approach is, one, we need to do an end of the year review, meaning let me review the previous year and look at 2 key things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what did I do well. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Well, if you keep a performance analysis, like the performance analysis that we created and we sell, there's a competition log. So if you're in an individual sport, you're logging all your competitions. And I tell people, if you have a really good event, you put an asterisk next to it. Now, why do you put an asterisk next to it? Because at the end of the year, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to open up your competition log and you're going to read all the entries that have an asterisk next to it. So if I have 5 tournaments, then I'm going to go back and review 5 tournaments. Well, I might have 3 entries per tournament.
Would you also be starring your breakthrough days? Or do you only put an asterisk next to the big competition?
Well, the breakthrough days are going to be highlighted. So they're going to be there. And the breakthrough days usually are 1, maybe 2 a year. They're very rare. They're not common. So what is common is I'm going to have success. I very rarely do not have success in a year. Some years might be very bleak. Other years might be abundant. But you're going to have some sort of success. Right. So I remember when I was competing, I went to the Army Marksmanship Unit, and each year I won something. Yeah. Sometimes it was really a small match. Other times it was bigger competitions. Some were maybe I won 1 or 2, and other years I won multiple. But you're going to have some sort of success. And if it's early in the year, you might have forgot about it by the time the end of the year. It's like, man, I won this big competition in March, but then I don't have a good summer. And then now at the end of the year, I'm thinking, well, this was a waste. Well, if I have a performance analysis and I open up that competition log and I look back and go, wait a minute, I have this competition in March. Well, why did I put an asterisk next to it? Now I go back and I read that, and now I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. This was really good. I did this, this, and this. So you're looking at what are the habits, the attitudes, what are some of the things that I was doing that I can control, that if I made that a habit throughout next year, it will greatly improve the probability that I'm going to be successful.
So your first step, well, first of all, if you're not keeping a performance analysis, you need to keep a performance analysis for 2023.
Yes, because otherwise, how are you going to remember?
It's hard to do a review without data.
Yeah, and the performance analysis is your personal data. I mean, think about it. You're writing in that journal every day in your own handwriting what you did, what you learned, if you did learn something, and what went well that day. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if it's in a tournament period, so I have a 3-day competition, I'm going to have an entry in the day before the competition, because usually there's a practice period, a training period before that event. Then I got 3 entries of the actual event, day 1, day 2, day 3. So then when I go back and review that, I'm not going to remember that 6 months later. But if I go back and review that, I'm like, wow, I read that. Now all of a sudden it starts to bring back my memory. Then I go to the next asterisk, and then let's say that might be 3 months later after the first one that I read. I read that, and then I read another. So let's say I have 4 asterisks, and I read all 4 of them. Do you think I'm going to see a common thread on habits and attitudes of those competitions? Why wouldn't I want to bring those over to the new year? I would want to.
So do you believe that if you're focusing only on what needs to be fixed, that you could be missing the opportunity to keep what works, and then that could wind up setting you back because you're focusing on failure instead of success at the beginning of the new year?
I think it limits it for sure.
It could limit your potential for
Correct.
that next season.
Because now, if you focus too much on what you need to fix, by definition, aren't you neglecting what's going well to some degree?
Yeah.
I'm giving more time in this area. Well, there's only so much time you have in a day. That means I've got to be doing what? Putting less time in something else. Well, how do I organize what I work on? If I'm working on what needs to be fixed from the beginning, well, what if I spend 5 hours doing it? I don't get to what was going well. Now, by the time the new season begins, I don't know how many weeks or months people have to ramp up in their particular sport, but you're ramping up to that, and all of a sudden you're not as prepared on the one area that was really good the year before because you've worked so much on this other area that you had to correct. So did you really perform better that next year? No. So I always like the approach of focusing on what went well, make sure that's good, then follow it up by, okay, what do we need to correct? Because we definitely have to correct what's hurting us. We have to fix that. There's no question. I'm just making the suggestion that there's a certain order that we need to do it in. Mm-hmm. Now, you could go one step further, and you could do the Jack Nicklaus approach or the John Wooden approach, which is once you start the new season, you go right back to the basics, the fundamentals.
Oh, build your fundamentals from the get-go every single year.
Yeah, and just like, look, I'm just going to act like I'm new. What are we looking at? And it just allows you a good clean slate, says this is when the season's beginning, and we start moving forward there. But especially in individual sports, I think it's important to really know, okay, this is what I want to maintain for next year. Really understand not just on what you're doing, but the habits and attitudes of what you want to carry. Mm-hmm. Because we're creatures that have basically habits and attitudes. So we might create, I'm leading toward this new habit or attitude that's going to help me. But if it doesn't get ingrained, guess what we're going to do? We're going to revert back to the old way.
Well, and that's why I didn't go to the gym.
Yeah.
Because while it was a great idea, and it was a really good deal, well, it was a good deal if I would have gone to the gym. It was a horrible deal for me financially by not going. But it was a good concept, but I didn't change my habits and my attitude in order to actually fulfill it.
So it was a wish, it wasn't a goal.
I stayed the same person. I just had a gym membership. But I wasn't a person who was productive at the gym.
You'd been better off giving that money to Lucas, and he would have called you once a week to remind you you need to work out.
I would have been better off having an accountability buddy.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. What I think we should do for our Patreon members, if this makes sense for you, is to really dive into what are those tips and tricks on how to make sure you're journaling appropriately to be able to do that end of the year analysis or review, so that way they're using their journal in an effective way. For those of you who are not Patreon members, what we do is we have a membership, and for our silver and gold level members, we add new content based on our discussions or our interviews. We go a little further into more detail. So if you want to train with us and get to learn more about what we're talking about, jump on our Patreon membership, become a member, and we can help you in a deeper way. So what's another, is there anything else that you wanted to add into this end of the year review that maybe people have neglected?
Well, the other thing I would recommend here, so start from the beginning. We have a performance analysis that I'm going to keep throughout the year. So our performance analysis, usually you have 2 books will complete a year for most people in most sports. So I take that and I have a year here that separates it. Then the next year I'm going to start a new performance analysis. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to just continue. Let's say I'm halfway through my performance analysis. I'm going to start a brand new one starting January 1.
Oh, so you're going to start like 100% from scratch.
Correct.
Now, do you do your end of the year review at the end of the fiscal year, or do you do the end of the year according to the sports year?
I would recommend people do it according to the sport they're in.
Right.
Me personally, my sport is all year round. So in the wintertime, we're shooting indoor events, and then we got outdoor events. So I just decided that we had a natural little break in the wintertime. You know, it was basically 2 weeks off that we're not really doing anything. So I just chose at the end of the fiscal year, that's when my season ends, and the beginning of the year would be January when my season begins, even though I'm technically in the middle of indoor, because we shoot more air rifle events because it's indoors, and we shoot, you know, 22 small bore and air rifle throughout the year when it's not super cold kind of thing.
So you like to be really organized, that the journals are specific to a certain year or season. Season. So the reason why that's important is if I'm making a journey on a 4-year period, why wouldn't I want to do a review? Maybe let me go back 3 years and see the progress I've made leading up into this next year. And so if I just bleed it all in, then I don't know when 1 year or season began versus ended. This way it ends. Now people sit there and say, yeah, but I've got 50 pages that I didn't complete in the journal. That's a waste. I'm going to say, well, what's the purpose of it? The purpose of performance analysis is not just journaling. It's recording valuable information that you can go back and review. It's to help build and protect self-image of the athlete. And it allows you the opportunity to end-of-the-year review. Well, if I'm going to do end-of-the-year review, wouldn't it make sense I start brand new for a new year? So then I'll go back. It's easy to find. To me, that would make logical sense. So that's the first thing I'm doing. And I'm not saying that you have to use our particular journal. I'm just saying you have to have some sort of way of recording and knowing when it begins, when it ends. In ours, we have an equipment log, a competition log, and then your performance analysis and entries. So then at the end of the season, boom, I'll go back, look at the competition log and say, okay, here's my asterisks. I'm going to go to these page numbers that I have. That's right there in the competition log. I mean, it's got your competition, the date, the page number, and an asterisk. So go to that page number. Well, that's going to be the practice day. And then I read that, I read the competition days, and I'm like, okay, I noticed this and this, and I write it down. I go to the next one, and I read that and say, wow, I noticed this and this, and I do it again and again. So after, let's say I have 4 entries, now I look back and see, I got some commonalities here throughout the year, So I want to make sure I do those things. Do you remember when you were competing consistently, when you would do an end-of-the-year review, was there anything that you remember that stuck out to you when you went back and looked at your journal?
Yeah, I didn't have, one, when I was competing, we didn't have a competition log set back.
Right.
So you'd have to
that was an addition you made to the journal, correct?
Yeah, because once I started teaching middle management full time, started talking to, Lanny about, hey, how did you do this? To him, it was a self-image building protecting type of tool. To me, it was like, okay, but we could use it more.
Yeah.
And then what happened was he kept a coach's log. He actually had a coach's journal.
Yeah.
So every time he would work with the client, one of his students, because our father ran the International Shooting School, so he would do a review with these, athletes. And he would have these notations, and then you'd go back and review it so we can help them plan for the next year. I'm like, well, why don't we add that into the performance analysis so we can log our competitions and then go back and find, okay, well, what are the ones we want to go back and review? There was one thing I really wish I had. I know for a fact that would have helped me in a big way, because we've seen what it's done with people that worked with since. They go back and they review it. We had an individual that wanted to become All-American in sporting clays.
Okay.
And he came up with a unique way of combining this. He says, after every competition I do well, or every training day I do well, meaning above average, he put a little happy face in the top right corner.
I like that.
And at the end of the month, he would go back and review all the happy faces. So he went one step further. He basically took the concept at the end of the review of looking back at what I did well and did it every month, kind of thing. So I want to make sure that I'm looking at it, carry that over the next year. Then I can look and say, okay, what do I need to make better? And come up with a plan to where I stay sharp in the areas that I'm good at, I build the areas I need to work at, and I improve the probability of having a great year next year. That's what we're going to do. If we don't have a way to log that, if we don't have a way to go back and review that, then it's going to be very difficult for you to make next year better than this year.
Absolutely. So in conclusion, make sure that you're keeping a performance analysis journal. Notate the best competitions with some sort of notation, asterisk, happy face, whatever works for you, so that you can go back and review those at the end of the year so that you can make a game plan for your next season. Thank you for watching. Go ahead and like this episode if you do. Subscribe to our channel and become a Patreon member. We would love to have you join our membership.